moving things over to the Western Conference, where it's very, very, very interesting. Pretty much 5 to 11. If we're being real, we're probably okay. We can throw in the 11th seed. We can talk about the 11th seed as well for for a bit. But 5 to 11 pretty much is a complete mad show in the Western Conference, right? Starting things off with the Dallas Mavericks, or I guess I'll say the seeds right now. The current 5th seed in the Western Conference is the Dallas Mavericks. 6th seed, Los Angeles Lakers. 7th seed, Portland Trailblazers. 8th seed, Golden State Warriors. 9th seed, Memphis Grizzlies. 10th seed, San Antonio Spurs. And 11th seed, New Orleans Pelicans. So it's completely crazy right now. There is it's a 7.5 game difference between 5 and 11. But after the 7th seed, the 5 to 7 seed are pretty much, all tied together. Starting out with the current 5 seed, the Dallas Mavericks, as we talked about, Luka Doncic was previously very opposed to it for the reasons that we named earlier in the episode. Pretty much he said, what's the point of working all year for that 7th or 8th seed or for that 6th seed when you could just be booted out in 2 games like that? What is the point of working all year for that? And that's a very valid point that we brought up. So Luka Doncic himself and the owner, Mark Cuban, have been vocal against the introduction of this play-in tournament. And for the Dallas Mavericks, they've had a kind of just a up and down year as well, similar to other teams that we've mentioned. It's been a very inconsistent year for them due to injuries, for one, right? Kristaps Porzingis being perpetually injured, a lot of their other, players being out, in and out. And also their defense hasn't been great, so they have not had a great year overall. And this brings me to my point about if the injuries come up right now, or for example in the play-in tournament, which it very well could be, because of if you're looking at the roster right now, they have a number of players out again. So if they get booted to the 7th seed, for example, and they have to play in the play-in tournament, and these injuries arise, they've worked all year to be in that playoff position, but they could just be booted out.
Yeah, and again, like Dallas is a team that I've invested a lot in time into paying attention to. And obviously, again, you mentioned the inconsistencies, the injuries have obviously has been a problem for them. But again, there's no denying that they are one of the best teams in the Western Conference. And Luka's kind of right in the sense that what is the point of working this, especially in the West? You win more games than the other teams to get the seeding that you are in. That's just how it works. Like tonight the Raptors lost to the Clippers. The Clippers, the Raptors lost, so the Raptors are going to be a lower seed. That's just how it works. If they won that game, they might be able to go up. That's just how it works. So again, if a team like Dallas that got all the way up to the 5th seed still have a chance to maybe slip down to 7 because it's just that tight in the West, and then have to be forced to play in a play-in tournament, it makes no sense for them. Like, I understand where their frustration is coming from, because it's like, why? Like we worked our way up to, we won more games than the 8th and 9th seeds, the 7th, 8th, and 9th seeds. We should be in the playoffs, but we have to play 2 games to prove why we should be there, even though our play the entire year should have been dictated that.
Exactly. That's pretty much the overarching point we were trying to, argue against the play-in tournament in the beginning of the episode. And this is the prime example of it. Another example of, the play-in tournament working against the NBA, because they definitely, I don't think they might want this, but they don't like the outcomes it could bring. And we're talking about the most, I guess, noteworthy or most headline-worthy team who could be impacted by the play-in tournament. The current 6th seed Los Angeles Lakers, who are currently tied with the 5th seed Dallas Mavericks. They're both 10 games behind the 1st seed in the Western Conference. And the Lakers are only 1 game up on the Portland Trailblazers. And with LeBron James and Dennis Schroeder both being out for, nobody knows right now, this could be a very scary proposition for the Los Angeles Lakers of them playing in the play-in tournament. And this is the exact reason why LeBron was very vocal against the play-in tournament, where he talked about whoever made it needs to be fired, right? this is exactly why the Los Angeles Lakers were expected to be a contender. We even named them as our favorite to win the championship this year, but they've just been decimated with injuries this year. Again, similar case to pretty much every other team in the league this year. But the Los Angeles Lakers themselves are being decimated with injuries, right? Players missing games. Anthony Davis missed a number of games with that Achilles injury and that calf injury. LeBron James missed a number of games with that ankle injury. Everyone else has pretty much missed a number of games due to injury. And again, as I said, now with Dan Schroeder and LeBron both being out for, Dan Schroeder being out for at least 10 to 14 days, and then LeBron being, questionable pretty much every game, they're, them going from a contending team to a team that arguably, I don't think it'll happen, but, that has a chance to be booted out of the playoff race entirely is not a good prospect. And this pretty much, again, as I said, robs the NBA of a huge revenue stream if the Lakers were by chance to miss the playoffs because of the fact that, again, LeBron is your biggest selling point as the NBA, and the Los Angeles Lakers are one of the biggest markets in the world. So for a team like the Lakers that has star power, that has contention goals, for them to miss the playoffs will be a backbreaker for the NBA.
Yeah, so I think the Lakers and LeBron particularly saying, what he said about the play-in tournament is kind of the major reason why we're all even talking about the play-in tournament as much as we are. Again, we said at the beginning of the episode, we had concerns when it was first introduced that it was going to be a thing this year. We had concerns, we kind of talked about over the last few months that, I don't know, this play-in might just be something. But ever since LeBron came out and the possibility got very real that the Lakers couldn't miss the playoffs if they get booted out in the play-in tournament, that's what people started to open up a little, like open their eyes a little bit, being like, oh shit, this play-in might not be that great of an idea, because if a team like Memphis or Golden State, we'll talk about in a bit, that gets hot at the right time, well, the Lakers might be like looking out the window while everyone else goes to play in the playoffs. So it's honestly just one of those things. And again, I think if we had a healthy LeBron James, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I think the Lakers would be in their rightful position in a top 3, top 4 seed in the West. But we are in this position where the Lakers have been dropping games. And again, the Lakers are an old, veteran-heavy team. They have a lot of vets on that team. So again, injuries were going to be a concern. And LeBron is 36 years old. Like, he's not a young player anymore. And I think he even said it himself, he might not be 100% from this injury. He might not ever get 100%, which is honestly pretty possible.
It makes me feel old.
Yeah, it makes us feel old. But again, Father Time is eventually going to catch up. It caught up to every great player. It caught up to Michael. It caught up to Kobe. Eventually
Tim Duncan.
Eventually your body is just going to break down. It's not going to be the same. LeBron has had this track record of just being superhuman when it comes to like not getting hurt or just recovering and being better than ever. It might not be the case this time. Like when LeBron was playing against the Raptors, you can visibly see he was not right. Like, he was not the same LeBron James that we all know he can be. I was always, like, when I was watching that game, I was always waiting. I'm like, LeBron's going to take over now. And it just never happened. And that's the biggest thing where I'm like, yo, this is a little concerning. If the Lakers can't even beat the Raptors, who are honestly not even playing half their team because they're trying to tank.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little,
to your point,
concerning.
Yeah, to your point about LeBron too, right? Man, I just lost my train of thought. But one more point about the Lakers, right? As an unbiased fan, would you rather see the Memphis Grizzlies in the playoffs or the Los Angeles Lakers?
Listen,
no
John
disrespect
Morant's
to
nice.
Yeah, John Morant's nice, but no disrespect to Memphis Grizzlies. I don't think anybody wants to see them in the playoffs over the Los Angeles Lakers, except for Memphis Grizzlies fans, right? Nobody really wants to see that. So it will be a big problem for the NBA if that were potentially to happen, that the Lakers would be booted out just because of injuries. Moving on to the current 7th seed, which is the Portland Trailblazers. Now, the Portland Trailblazers are actually probably the most comfortable team with the play-in tournament, given the fact that they have experience from it last year and they were the winners of the play-in tournament in the Western Conference last year. They also have a very good team on paper. Again, they haven't had the greatest season, but they do have Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, who given 1 or 2 games can get can catch fire and just absolutely decimate the opposing team. So I think the Blazers, I think if there's a team that's fine with the play-in tournament, it's the Portland Trailblazers, who, again, to my point, have also been very bad at times in the last few weeks, especially concerning their defensive issues, which we talked about, for a number of episodes. And these issues could potentially bite them. Now, again, everyone, I think, wants to see the Portland Trailblazers in the playoffs because they are a very exciting product for the NBA. They're definitely a great playoff team to watch. But if they were to be booted out of the playoffs because of the fact that they lost a game or two, again, it's not a good look for the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, again, like Portland has been a team that, you can argue is pretty comfortable with the play-in format. But I think I need to counter your point in the sense that last season when they did the play-in tournament, they were coming from behind. Like they had to earn their spot to get to the playoffs. This time they have to keep their spot, and then when you talk about their woes defensively, now for that more hungrier team like the Warriors, Memphis, the Spurs, if they start to be a lot more aggressive, it could be that Portland might get booted out because, again, they got to play the 8th seed to, first of all, maintain their spot as the 7th seed. And the 8th seed's not any cupcake either. So what I'm trying to say is that it's a little different from last year. So yes, although they understand what a play-in tournament's like, it's not the same as last season. But I do agree with your point where they have Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum who could catch fire on any given night. But again, it all depends on how well the team is playing. And then over the last few weeks, they haven't been that great. Although, again, they have talent on paper, but the lack of defense and that it could be very concerning for them.
Yeah, moving on to the 8th-seeded Warriors, who are arguably, could be the most dangerous team in this scenario, just because of and again, we talked about this last week with the episode we did with Steph Curry. The Golden State Warriors could be a very, very dangerous team for any other play-in tournament team with Steph Curry playing the way that he's playing right now at the level that he's playing at. And if they're able to take out a team like the Lakers, it just further solidifies, Steph Curry's supposed MVP campaign. The Golden State Warriors are a very dangerous team. And, we've seen it all over social media where Lakers fans are very worried at the possibility of facing a team like the Golden State Warriors and then potentially losing just because of the fact that, Steph Curry's unguardable, right? He's unguardable at this point. So if he just goes crazy, and then we talked about a couple of episodes ago as well, the potential of a guy like Draymond Green, playing up to his role in the NBA playoffs, him going crazy in the playoffs, a guy like Andrew Wiggins, who, depending on the night, could be that second option that the Warriors could very well use. So, the Warriors have a real possibility of upsetting a team like the Lakers, like the Blazers in the play-in tournament. And, again, the NBA will make a lot of money off of Steph Curry, but who will they be losing out on in the process is the question.
Man, now that you brought that up, man, I can see that totally as like a passing of a torch kind of thing the NBA wants to have. We're like, oh, here, LeBron's getting older, passing the torch. Steph beats LeBron to pass the torch to as the new face of the league. I can totally see that narrative being played out. But again, like I gotta agree with you. Like again, the Warriors are in such a prime position where if they catch fire, and Steph Curry has been heating up for these last couple of months, he's been playing very well. It's very, very possible that they could sneak into the playoff. Like the Warriors have a lot of playoff experience between Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson. Obviously, like he's on the bench, but again, he still had that wisdom and that experience on there. And the pedigree of that team is still there. Like they still have that championship, DNA. And I think when it comes down to it, they could be very dangerous. And it's very real that if the Lakers slip to 7, and they got to play the 8th seed, who's the Warriors, man, I can see like that's rating. When you're talking about the pros of the playing tournament, that's the pros of the playing tournament. But the thing is, not every 7th or 8th seed has a LeBron James and a Steph Curry on it. Like that's That's the other point you got to realize. But man, what a narrative that would be. But yeah, it would be crazy to see.
Yeah, like the Warriors are a very dangerous team, I think, in this scenario. And then I guess lumping the last three teams who are currently in the play-in tournament race together, I think there's a one-game difference between the Memphis Grizzlies and the San Antonio Spurs, who are the 9th and 10th seed respectively. And then the New Orleans Pelicans are 2 games behind the Spurs, so they still have a chance to get into it. The Memphis Grizzlies pretty much have been quietly a very solid team throughout the whole season. I think they're looking for revenge after last season when they were booted out in the NBA play-in tournament. And yeah, they've been pretty good for the whole season, especially now with Jaren Jackson Jr. returning. So that I think adds another dynamic into this play-in tournament. The San Antonio Spurs, they have Greg Popovich, right? Enough said. It's the San Antonio Spurs. We know what they're capable of doing, what Greg Popovich's staff is capable of doing. And then finally, we have the New Orleans Pelicans, who have been pretty disappointing this season. They've been very disappointing this season, but they still have a shot at it. And when we're talking about the play-in tournament, if we go back to last season, why was the play-in tournament arguably created? For the New Orleans Pelicans, right?
For Zion.
For Zion Williamson, if the New Orleans Pelicans were able to sneak into the play-in tournament and then win out, which they're very capable of doing, they have a very talented roster. If they win out and go to the NBA playoffs, that's literally a prime reason why the NBA created the play-in tournament.
Man, like, oh man, like, see when you say some things like that, where like, oh, they created the play-in tournament to get Zion Williams in the playoffs, it just sounds so believable because that's just how the NBA kind of is. It's very narrative driven, to say the least. Like, I'm not gonna say it's rigged, but I'm also not gonna say that like the NBA doesn't want certain things to happen. Like they if they want something to happen, they're gonna kind of nudge it to be in their favor. But
hey
yeah,
man, money is money, bro.
money is money for sure. But again, when you're talking about teams like Memphis, again, like it's tough for them. I really like their team. They have a young team. I love John Morant. He's a fantastic player. But man, if they only didn't play in the West, man. If they played in the East, man, they're a guaranteed playoff team, man. A fun team to watch. But man, in the West, it's so hard to see them beating a team like that, like a Lakers or a Blazers or Warriors. Man, it's just tough. And San Antonio again, Pop is a genius, but man, he ain't a miracle worker. So, like, how likely is it? And again, I'm kind of like cooled off on the New Orleans hype train. Like, I just think Zion is a great player, but he's not at the level yet to carry a team to win victories. And I think that's something that he's gonna have to work on. And again, there's some players in the Pelicans who I feel should have stepped up and didn't. We're talking about guys like Lonzo Ball, who we've talked about a lot.
Well, I mean, Lonzo's been pretty good on
since he came back. But again, where was that for the whole season? So I don't know. We've talked about things about like this like in previous episodes, but in terms of these three teams, it is what it is. They do have a shot, but it's just not as great or not as impactful as what you'd see with the other teams we've talked about in the Western Conference.